Josh. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 4:01 p.m. on December the 8th, 2020 for this standing committee meeting of Town Council. We'll begin with the adoption of the agenda, looking for any additions or changes to the agenda, starting with administration.
None, thank you.
Perfect. Council, any discussion, additions, or changes to the agenda, please? Seeing none, I am looking for a motion or a direction, please. Councillor Waugh?
Yeah, I would move that we adopt the standing committee agenda for December 8th, 2020.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor Waugh. Any discussion on that, Council? Seeing none, then we'll call that to question. All those in favor, please. And seeing none opposed, that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And we will move on to our Citizens Minute with Council. Miss Anderson, my understanding is we don't have anybody for Citizens Minute today?
There are none.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We will move on then to our action items. Our only action item of the afternoon is the Municipal Operating Support Transfer Most Program Funding Update and COVID-19 Preparedness on page 2 of our agenda, and that'll be presented by our CAO, Miss Olson. Miss Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report is provided to Council with a few intended purposes. First of all, to provide a fuller account of the mitigation measures administration undertook throughout this year to offset losses and increased expenses due to COVID to the close of 2020, but also to provide some information and options to Council on the use of the most funding prior to the next look at budget 2021, which we will be embarking on next week at this time. The recommendation on this item to Council is to consider utilization of that most money to offset the impacts of COVID on the 2020 budget. Admin has kept some diligent track of the impacts and can produce information on losses and expenditures should reporting be required on the most funding. At this time, it's not expected, but it's good to be prepared. This would produce a surplus to the 2020 budget of around $700,000 to use for Council-approved options such as what is explored within the report. This includes emergency response reserve contribution to manage some future impacts of COVID into 2021, Chamber of Commerce additional funding request supporting local businesses and tourism programming in 2021, operational budget support to offset tax rate increases over the next 3 years, which is an evenly distributed benefit to businesses and residents and is what other communities that we've reached out to are looking to do with their most money. And just to explain that a little bit further, the motion related to this within this report is incorrect. It doesn't include the proper proposed breakdown within the report, which includes $200,000 to be utilized in 2021, $200,000 for 2022, and $100,000 in 2023. Should Council determine that they'd like to move in this direction, this would need to be corrected to reflect what's included in the report. And the reason the breakdown looks the way that it does is there's some consideration given to alleviate the bounce back or the spike that naturally occurs when there's a credit or reduction that doesn't stem from a reduction in operating expenses. So like the most money, and that's included in chart 2, that funding attributed to the next 3 budgets. As well, during that time, as always, administration would be looking at reviewing and creating efficiencies in future budgets, in future budget years. So in addition to that, Council can consider a number of other methods of utilization of this funding, including topping up the community grant program funds to support local nonprofits, or placing more funds in that emergency reserve for use through the second phase. So there's a number of recommended actions intended to create some decision points or considerations for Council in next week's budget 2021 meeting. I just also want to note that some changes to wording were made previous to tonight's meeting, and the agenda was redistributed to clarify that. I have Ms. Fox present tonight as well to assist in answering any of Council's questions and to clarify any information that Council is seeking. At this point, we're welcoming of Council's questions.
Very good. Thank you, CAO. Council, this is open us for questions and discussion or potentially directions. Do I have anybody that wishes to speak? I guess I'll start then. CAO and of course administration in general, whoever wants to speak to it. I was trying to get an understanding a little bit around the section that talked about, and forgive me if I'm looking for the terminology. It was essentially a future decisions to be determined by council. I'm sorry, I should have highlighted it. It was basically like an unspecified future allocation, a placeholder, I think is what it had said. Could administration speak to that with any, like, is there any clarity around that, or what the intention with that particular amount was?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just taking a look to see if was it referenced in the motions or in the directions?
Yeah, it was in the report, and I apologize. I should have highlighted it before I asked the question. You know, we can come back to it too, and I can find the specific wording if it makes things easier. Just give me a moment. Ms. Fox?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, my internet froze when you were asking your question, and if I can provide help, I would just need to rehear what was asked.
Yeah, and I think the mayor actually just pointed it out to me. I'm going to find it here in the recommendations. Just give me 1 second. Yes, that's the one. So on page 9 of 10, under option number 1, the third paragraph down says that committee direct administration to bring forward in draft 2 of the budget, December 15th, a $400,000 council operating project. It's used to be determined by council at a future meeting and funded from the emergency response reserve. Yeah, that's what I was looking for a little bit more clarity around. If admin could speak to that, please. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will defer to Ms. Fox to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair, through to Council. So in order for us to not have to make a budget amendment in the future, one of the ways of doing that is creating a placeholder within the budget that allocates funds to the projects. So if there was remaining funds left over from the 700,000, however, if we allocate 500,000 of that to taxation, there would only be $200,000 remaining that could be put into an operating project as a placeholder. So when we made the change from the 200,000 and the 100,000 to be allocated to spreading that out over 3 years, this motion here will probably have to be adjusted to 200,000 to account for those amounts being allocated out through taxation. So my apologies for that. It was a little bit convoluted trying to play with all the options. And in that, just to clarify, that just allows council to have a placeholder in the budget that is an operating project that would allow you throughout 2021, because we didn't have enough time to come up with different programs to give you options for this $200,000 if you wanted to offer other programs throughout 2021.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Fox. Council, any further questions? Councillor Nelson.
We've had the emergency budget, emergency contingency conversation a few times in the past, and it's been suggested that an emergency spending policy would be coming forward to council. I'd appreciate an update on where that is, and then I might have a follow-up comment after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the intention, and I was going to speak to this in the CAO update, that this can be included in the fiscal responsibility policy that is also due to council. This is something that we were looking to bring before the end of the year and we've committed to. However, it's looking more likely that it would come the first regular meeting of January for council. Should there be a need, we can look at moving that up and bringing it next week when we have our second look at budget. But if council's comfortable, we could look at January 5th instead.
Thank you very much,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my concern is there's still no defined mechanisms of how emergency money is either approved or reported, and so I think it puts council in a challenging situation to continue to put significant amounts of money in a reserve that doesn't have the same level of oversight. So understanding that a policy is coming forward very soon gives me some level of confidence, but without seeing a draft or knowing anything of what it might look like, I still, at this point would struggle to put it into a reserve that lacks the oversight that most of our reserves, at least in my experience, have. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, any other comments or questions? Councillor Ostashik, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a process question for administration, I guess, and it's in regards to the recommended motion. If it would be cleaner, neater, better to have that split into 3 or 4 motions, or if it's adequate to do it all at once, or what would be the preference for that?
CAO or Ms. Fox?
I'll defer to Ms. Fox.
Thank you. It's hard on Zoom to read body language from your partner. So I think it makes no difference. If council would like this to be split up, it's absolutely set up so that council can split it up as they like.
I could follow up, Mr. Chair.
Please do.
Okay. I would actually like to make the motion as recommended, but with the numbers corrected, if that's available.
Councillor Ostashik, if it's okay, I can provide that information, the corrections to Ms. Anderson.
Yes, please.
Okay. So that, I believe, is the second motion that committee direct administration to bring forward in draft 2 of the budget, December 15th, the use of would be 400,000 of the emergency response reserve to offset future year operational cost increase, of which 200,000 to be used in 2021 and 200,000 to be used in 2022 and 100,000 to be used in 2023. Does that look correct to you, Councillor Stashik?
It does, and that was my understanding from both reading the report and the comments from administration today, that those were the correct numbers. The only other thing, though, I believe, is that the be the third motion, the draft 2 of the budget, December 15th. Right now it says 400,000. I believe that has to be changed to 200,000.
That's right.
I just looked to administration to make sure those numbers are all correct now.
I'm not sure if my hand can be seen, but the 400,000 in the first motion that was changed, 200 and 200 and 100 is 500,000. So it needs to be 500,000 there. Yep. And then I think we're good to go.
Okay, if I can carry on, Mr. Chair, that's all right. Mr. Chair, you're muted.
Sorry, it's when we switch between present mode and regular mode, it actually cuts off my ability to hit mute, so I apologize for that. Yeah, please do.
Okay, so if there's no opposition from council, I'd like to make the motion in its entirety. If council prefers it split, that's fine too.
Council, at this point, I will check to see if there is any concerns from the rest of council. And please forgive me for a moment. For whatever reason, the presentation mode that we're currently on is not allowing me to see the other speakers. So if you just give me a moment, I am going to have a look at this. If we can take off present mode, please. Thank you very much. There we go. Council, is there any desire to split the motion? Okay. Not seeing any, then Councillor Ostashik, would you care to speak to the motion, please?
I would, yes, thank you. I appreciate administration bringing this forward in the format.
Sorry, point of order. Could the motion be actually read? It's been scrolling back and forth, and we've changed numbers from what's in front of us. So I don't have an issue with it being split, but I actually don't know what the motion is. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Councillor Ostashik, to cut you off there.
No, that's fine. If Ms. Anderson or somebody administration could read that, then that would be fine.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Our motion on the floor is that committee direct administration to bring forward in draft 2 of the budget December 15th, direction to place excess funds from the 2020 operational budget due to the most program funding into the emergency response reserve. That committee direct administration to bring forward in draft 2 of the budget December. No, this is not correct. This doesn't look like it's. Looks like there's a doubling there. Just give me a moment, please. Okay, no, I think I'm just going to look to administration. Administration, that still meets your recommendation, yes? That's just me looking at that funny.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, could you repeat that?
If you could just direct your attention to the presentation on the screen, I just want to make sure that that meets with the recommendation that came in our report. At first, it didn't look right to me, but I think on second glance, it's very hard to flip back and forth between screens using a single monitor. So I'm going to have to rely on administration to let me know if that's what is represented in the report from your recommendation.
I think, Mr. Chair, that the changes are correct at this point now.
Okay, thank you. So sorry, continuing on with the reading there, that committee direct administration to bring forward in draft 2 of the budget December 15th, the use of $500,000 of the emergency response reserve to offset future year operational costs, of which $200,000 to be used in 2021 and $200,000 to be used in 2022 and $100,000 to be used in 2023, with the intention of minimizing taxation impacts on business and residents. That committee direct administration to bring forward in draft 2 of the operational budget December 15th, a $200,000 council operating project, its use to be determined by council at a future meeting and funded from the emergency response reserve. That committee direct administration to bring further options for the use of the emergency response reserve to a future standing committee meeting no later than March 1, 2021. So all that being said, again, just wanting to make sure that it's appropriately addressed, council. It is certainly within your rights to request a split as a non-debatable request. So again, just looking to council to see if there is any desire to split the motion. Councillor Waugh?
Sorry, and I don't want to gum up the works, but I have no desire to split the motion, but I do have a follow-up question just based on the report.
For sure. Hold on a sec, though. Councillor Ostashik still has the right to speak to the motion. We were just dealing with a point of order. So at this point, I'm going to go to Councillor Ostashik to speak to the main motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The joys of doing meetings in the Zoom era never ceases to amaze me. But anyway, I just wanted to take a minute to express my appreciation to administration for bringing this forward in the format that they did. I just across the board, the input that I've gotten from citizens right through all spectrums or all areas of the political spectrum is that there is a desire that this most money be used for taxation relief, which I found interesting that pretty much everybody I talk to, no matter their leaning politically, feels that that's the appropriate way to do this. The fact that it's spread out over 3 years is beneficial as well. It's not all going to be applied in 1 year. We don't know how many more years that this is going to be impactful. So, sorry, I appreciate that as well. In terms of having the money put into, the $200,000 put into the emergency response reserve, I think that's a good thing to do as well, because the suggestion and the wording of the motion makes that it's a council controlled reserve, and there can be discussion forward on how council wants that to be implemented and used. A lot of my concerns about the emergency response reserve not having any operational guidelines to it are kind of put by the wayside by the fact that all the money that's going in there right now is defined in how and when and how much is going to come out, or it's being defined by council regarding how council wants to see that money is used in the future. So I'm very happy with the motion that was presented. I think it satisfies the wants and needs of the community, and obviously I'll fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. I have Councillor Waugh, then Councillor Hawes, then myself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to refer to page 6 of 9, chart 2. I think this has been covered off, but I just wanted to clarify. When it says COVID impact response ideas, it lists the Chamber of Commerce additional funding, the Flower Basket program. Those are 2 items that have already been identified within our budget, have they not?
Administration.
I'll defer to Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Chair, through to Council. So through our last deliberations, Council gave us direction to address these 2 items within the budget. So the next draft of the budget is coming forward with those 2 items in there and suggested funds coming from the Emergency Response Reserve to fund those in 2021.
Councillor Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But that's just those are just ideas, correct? Like, it's covered off in one of the motions that the 200,000 will be in council's control.
Admin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, through to Council. We do have the 200,000 under council's control at this point, and when we bring the budget forward, so those 2 items would deplete the $200,000 by whatever amounts you allocate. So overall, we anticipate there being about $700,000 to carry forward and utilize. Of that $700,000, we're utilizing $500,000 of it to offset taxation. The remaining $200,000 of it is to be used at council's discretion. If we use $30,800 of it to cover off the Chamber of Commerce money, that will reduce that amount by that much. And also the Flower Basket program, there's a specific motion made by council to have that funded by grant funding. And there is some discussion whether that, if you guys move forward during budget deliberations, whether that might have to be rescinded, or if council would understand that this is coming from reserve, which essentially was funded by grant. We need to flush out a little bit how we bring that forward through budget deliberations. So essentially about $59,000 during budget deliberations may reduce the overall $200,000 available. Also important to note that we're basing the $700,000 on year-end results, and the motion is specifically worded so that at year end, if there is excess dollars there, that money will be placed in there as well. So if we end up with $800,000 surplus, that will go in there. And obviously, if there's less funds, that will be important to bring to council. We're not anticipating that at this time. So if there's excess funds in there, we would let you know during year-end results.
Councillor Waugh.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My question's been answered. It's an idea. It's still going to be under our control. These are just suggestions that administration are going to be bringing forward, and I think we can debate the merits of them probably at that time. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I've been thinking long and hard on this, and I think, with this money coming to us, and I want to thank administration, first of all, for also going after this grant and being successful at it. I think this is the best and way of using the money. I too, with taxation, we've heard a lot from the community. It's been a very difficult year, and just as of today, looks like the close of the year is going to be just as difficult for many businesses. As I saw the provincial announcement, looks like it's closing in dining in and bars and other things as well. So I think this is the best option. And I too like the fact that we've stretched it over 3 years. We don't know how long this is going to last, but I do look forward, and I thank Ms. Fox for clarifying that $200,000. And I realize that'll be budget, but personally, I think that $200,000. I mean, one, I do want to see flowers in our community, but I don't want to see it to personally come from that fund. I think there's a lot more things that we can use that money for in the days to come, months to come, and depending on how COVID affects our community, there may be other options there. I would like to see that possibly from another grant if possible, but but we'll discuss that later in budget on December 15th. But I do think that this is going to be the best use of our money. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. I have myself up next. I'll just begin with a question, and that essentially to administration is the $200,000 that's earmarked for future council consideration. This can be essentially an allocation of money that we could use towards, later defining it as perhaps as an option, small business and social service program relief for members of our community. As a very high level idea, that would be fleshed out in our future discussions, correct? Edmund?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start, and then I'll turn it to Ms. Fox. So that's really reflected in the final direction provided by council to administration, that further options through discussion with council through budget and into the new year, that administration would bring back a report on how that would work exactly. If there were programs that council was considering for nonprofit or business support, it will take a little bit to work out exactly the parameters of something that would achieve that direction. So that's captured in that final piece of direction. I'd look to Ms. Fox if she had anything to add to that.
Ms. Fox?
Thank you, Chair, through to council. Yeah, and just some of the feedback too was in regards to the not-for-profit group. So if there was an opportunity under the community grant program or anything that council wanted to consider, we hope to bring that forward in a more detailed report for those excess funds. I know in the first report that we brought this to council, we had suggested possible community grant opportunities, and there's nothing saying that. I know the parameters in the community grant program are that, but maybe there's another category added for COVID impacts. I think there's lots of flexibility. It just will take a little bit of time, and whatever program we have to set up, we'll have to be able to administer appropriately and fairly. And we didn't want to do that overnight for sure.
Sorry, I'll take this moment to speak to the motion. I'm fully in favor of moving this forward. I want to thank Councillor Ostashik for putting the direction forward and administration for doing the footwork on this. You know, this ties into a number of conversations that I've had in the community. Yesterday, I was supposed to attend until it was delayed, a live town hall with our MLA, members of the business community to understand the impacts of what was potentially coming down the pipeline regarding COVID. And I mean, as we're in this meeting, the province is making announcements right now about what some of those changes and impacts are going to be. You know, we had our chamber president come and speak to us last week about some of the impact and hurt that business owners and employees are feeling. And, you know, I absolutely agree with what Councillor Ostashik had mentioned. You know, talking to people in the community, there is a lot of hurt going around right now. And this is absolutely not the time to be considering, you know, tax increases. This is the time where we have to buckle down, look for efficiencies within the organization, and take advantage of any opportunities, in this case, that Most has, you know, given us, but to do so wisely. And then last, you know, I had an excellent conversation with Mr. Bernie Kreiner this afternoon. Well, one of the things I thought about right away in terms of social programs in our community was our food bank. You know, it is an organization that puts food on the table for people, and that hits home. So, you know, I wanted to see how organizations like the food bank are faring in our community and what potential benefit that they could have from some of this funding. You know, thankfully, Mr. Kreiner said that they are in a good state, but he knows of other organizations that aren't. And so I think the $200,000 that we have is something that we can utilize towards trying to ease some of their burden. So I think looking at our social programs, looking at the impacts to small businesses, and considering the tax impacts to all our citizens, that's a very responsible way to look at this over a staggered number of years. So I'm looking forward to supporting this. We will go to Councillor Race, then Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to apologize for being late. I'm asking, would you feel comfortable just doing a bit of a recap on what I've missed?
Ms. Anderson, if you want to take a moment to present again the motion on the floor, and then Councillor Race can read it. And then essentially, Councillor Race, Councillor Ostashik has made a direction that committee direct administration to bring forward the excess operational funds split essentially between $500,000, which will go towards operational cost increases, and $200,000 of which would go into essentially the council operating project, which use will be determined by council at a future meeting and funded from the emergency response reserve. And you can read the full direction there at your leisure.
Yeah.
Councillor Race, does that sort of bring you up to speed?
It does. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, my pleasure. Do you have any clarifying questions before we keep going?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Councillor Race. I have Councillor Hawes, then the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question in regards to the motion. So the way it's worded is the $200,000 is going into the reserve emergency fund, and then that $200,000 will be discussed at no later than March of 2021. Is that how I read it?
Edmund?
And that's the question to Ben.
Thank you, Chair, through to Council. So yeah, essentially, and why the motions have been changed a few times, it was really hard to flesh out something that was simple and easy to manage. As we discussed during budget, if you take money and allocate it to what we've suggested, flower basket and chamber, it will reduce that overall $200,000 amount. But whatever that reduction is will come back in the form of a report early in the new year to show you you had 200,000. It's been reduced by this much. And also year-end results might adjust that amount a little bit. So whatever that might be, those results will come back to you in the form of a report. But essentially, we're trying to hit around the $200,000 mark, and then whatever happens at budget deliberation will be reduced. Whatever's left, you'll have remaining to make a decision on.
Okay. And the reason I asked that question to clarify it is because I don't want to go into budget talks having that discussion if there's already a motion that there's going to be $200,000 in that account. Because, I mean, in my opinion, then it would be, that's what we're discussing, is that $200,000 to not even bring back that in budget. But if we still have that time to talk about it and the motion is fine with that, then I'm good with that. But I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be supporting this motion. I believe it gets us to our second look at the budget in a much better position. We'll be looking at starting with a 2% increase. My ultimate goal is to bring that number even lower. And as Councillor Magoon and others mentioned, the $200,000 gives us flexibility to allocate those funds to perhaps those who have been hit the hardest. Obviously, it's been a common theme in our community. So overall, I like it. We made progress, but the difficult conversation will be on the 15th. But overall, I really support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have myself and then Councillor Nelson in queue. I'd just like to build on what the mayor had said. You know, a lot of citizens, I think, often wonder, you know, what does council do? How do they talk about budget? That sort of thing. The discussion around most is definitely happening in parallel with other conversations around budget. And I think it's important for our citizens to know that. For many of us, we've spent the last couple of weeks looking very closely at our budget and looking for efficiencies. This is not a matter of just trying to offset our budget with only the most funding. I think it's also about council doing their homework and seeing what we can do with the budget that's been presented to try and continue to build on those efficiencies. And I just want to take a moment to assure the public that this is not just most that we're looking at, that there's a number of different issues, and we'll see that further fleshed out, I think, on the 15th. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will go to Councillor Nelson.
I have a specific question and likely a follow-up. Is there any legislative requirement for us to pass this direction tonight?
Admin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as far as legislative requirement, there's no, this wouldn't hamper council from making similar direction during budget deliberation. However, it does impact what we bring forward next week for our starting point for our second look at budget. So whatever direction council provides us tonight will be incorporated into budget version number 2 for 2021 and then brought to you next week. So that's one of the considerations.
Thank you. If I could follow up, Mr.
Please.
Chair, I would actually like to make a motion to postpone. You want to pull it up? It's basically a motion to postpone until after the second draft of budget 2021 has been presented to council.
We'll just make sure Ms. Anderson has that. Perfect. Thank you. So Councillor Nelson, would you care to speak to that?
Yeah, I would like to speak to it. I've spent a lot of time talking with fellow councillors, citizens, really since the presentation from the first budget, and a lot of that conversation was there's certainly work we can do to get to a place that citizens are more comfortable with, whether that's 0, whether that's 1, whether that's -5, whatever that number might be. My concern is that going into this budget with already basically making a recommendation to put at least $200,000 towards the operating budget for 2020. That's happening prior to council doing their work on budget. And to me, if we do some good work on budget, I think we could allocate more of this $200,000 to specific programs that could help the community, whether that's parks, whether that's food bank, whether it's social, whether it's health, like whatever those programs are, I think we could actually do more than $200,000 towards that. After we've gotten to work on that budget. One of the biggest concerns always with program funding is that when grants are used to allow operations to be greater than they normally would be, ultimately that comes to roost at some point in the future. And to me, we might be able to have $400,000 that we can put towards supporting business, supporting community, and doing all those things. And I think after we've seen the second draft of budget, that's when we'll really know if that number of 200 and 200 is correct. So I'm just not ready yet without us doing work on the second draft of budget, and also not having a lot of time to talk to citizens about the budget because we didn't have much time before the last time we saw it. We're going to be in a lot better position to make this decision at that point. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. I have Councillor Hawes next.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. There's no reason why we still can't do that. There's no reason that we can't send administration back to, and utilize these funds, and council still do that work and find more savings to put towards that reserve fund. So, I mean, whether I'm not going to be in favor of postponing it because there's nothing stopping us from doing that. Council has gone to, and as Councillor McGoon said, have a couple of weeks to chew on this, and we've gone through it and have that discussion on the 15th. And if another $200,000 of savings or whatever can be made, or whatever the dollar figure may be after discussions, and then transfer that into that same reserve, which means there could be $400,000 in that. So I really don't think that there's any need to postpone it. Let administration take these numbers, put it to the budget, and then council and administration sit down and figure out what more can we come up with if that's possible. So thank you.
I have myself in queue next. I would be okay with supporting a motion to postpone, simply because at the end of the day, not that I'm not sure how it would actually impact my assessment or changing my sort of judgment on the motion or the direction as it's been made. Although I don't know if all councillors would agree on this. I actually would continue to support tax relief through most, even if we do, and in fact, especially if we do find efficiencies in the budget. I think any way that we can seek tax relief in this year, because this is such a strange year, such a different year, that I think any relief we can provide our citizens is good relief, understanding that it might not be the best practice to offset operational with grants. This is not a normal year. So I guess that's where I would disagree, Councillor Nelson, respectfully. But again, I think knowing that information and looking at that after we have a second crack at budget, for me, it's a chicken and an egg scenario. It doesn't hurt it either way. So if that's time that you'd appreciate having, personally myself, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. Council, looking for any discussion on motion to postpone. Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't be supporting the motion to postpone. As you said yourself, it's a chicken and egg thing. It doesn't prevent us from doing any of the work that we would have done anyways in regards to looking for any savings and efficiencies that we can in the capital and operating budgets when it comes back on the 15th. But it does give our citizens the comfort of knowing that there's $200,000 of tax relief that is for sure going to be coming the 2021 year, and hopefully some additional. It's $200,000 in savings that we're able to find without affecting current service levels, and that's ultimately what we want to do. We want to be as efficient as we can. We want to be able to provide the best service levels we can. This gives us an opportunity to do both. With the proviso that we're going to continue to do work on the budget and try and get it to the best place that we can. So, as I said, I won't be supporting the motion. I don't see that there's a need to postpone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Council, any further discussion on the motion to postpone? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really don't care either way. This is an approach. It's changing the document. Honestly, if I don't hear from the other two councillors who haven't spoke to it, then I'll move forward with voting against this. I could be swayed the other way. It's really just how we want to attack this on the 15th. I can see points on both sides, and there's work to be done regardless of which position we take. So I'm really indifferent. I'll go with the majority. And if I'm the swing vote, then I don't know what I'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Waugh.
Well, since Mayor Michaels invited those who hadn't spoke to speak, I will chime in here. I'm going to be against postponing. I like the way this report is structured. I like the fact that it puts out the tax relief over a few years and still gives us a couple $100,000 to figure out where we can best direct some support in the community. So, and like others have already said, on the 15th, we'll still have to get down to do the hard work we have to do as a council. But I appreciate what administration's done here. I think it shows a lot of foresight and a balance and approach. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waugh. Council, any other discussion? Councillor Race?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too will not be supporting the motion to postpone. I agree with what Councillor Haas is saying. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Council, any further discussion on the motion to postpone? Seeing none, then I will call that to question. All those in favor, please indicate. All those opposed? And that is defeated 2-5 with Nelson and Magoon in favor.
Sorry, my screen is. Did you get that?
That's correct. Nelson and Magoon in favor. And defeated 2-5. Are we good with that one, Wendy?
Sure, if you like.
Perfect. Okay. So we go back to the motion on the floor, which is Councillor Ostashik's main motion. And we'll just, there we go. Thank you very much. So Council, any further discussion regarding the motion on the floor? Councillor Nelson.
Thanks. I won't be voting in favor of this direction as it stands, only because I don't think this is where we land with numbers once all is said and done. It's very likely that that I'll support something similar during budget and where budget is allocated. But I want council to work on the budget and then know the type of dollars that we have through this grant and where we want to allocate it. We haven't done our work on budget yet, and it's just too soon for me to give definite numbers on where we want to put things prior to us doing our work. So I support the concept of it. I can't commit to allocating specific values, especially ones that have changed throughout the document that was presented in agenda has changed multiple times. So I haven't really had enough conversations with citizens either to really understand what that looks like. So love the concept. I won't support this motion as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, any other discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, then I will call it to question. All those in favor, please indicate. Mr. Mayor, sorry if I could just see your hand. In favor? Perfect. Opposed? One opposed. That is passed 6-1 with Councillor Nelson against. And Wendy, are we good? We have that recorded?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll move on to reporting period. Thank you very much. Or sorry, actually, before we move on to reporting, council or administration, is there anything further on this action item before we move on? Seeing none, then we will move on to reporting, beginning with council. And I will start with Councillor Race. Any reporting or urgent matters?
No, sir, I'm good.
Thank you very much. Councillor Haas.
No, nothing for me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, this whole reporting during standing thing is new. So last week had another meeting with the Wetland Policy Review Group. It's going quite well. Pretty soon there'll be some questionnaires going out to municipalities across the province. So finally making some good progress there. On Monday, I guess yesterday, we had a BIBO meeting and really some rubber hitting the road on a lot of things, and look forward to some big progress and things coming to council in the very near future, likely January or February. So a lot of positives, but making sure we turn those positives into long-term successes, especially with some of the grant funding. And then today had a meeting in regards to community-owned energy projects with somebody through a cooperative, which was quite interesting, and some really neat models out there across municipalities in Alberta. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Councillor Nelson indicated, BIBO committee meeting yesterday, and yeah, some really exciting progress happening with that, and good news, and yeah, very excited to be bringing some information to council in the very near future. In addition, HREDC, Hinton Regional Economic Development Coalition meeting last week. First meeting with our new chair. The meeting went very well. A lot of ground was covered and discussed, including sorry, just looking at my notes here. Impacts to the local economy from some of the industrial activity going on in the area, including the Cascade Power Project and TC Energy Pipeline Project, and the impact that they're having on the community, and some less positive feedback about the impact that it's having on the community in terms of rental accommodation potential concerns that could stem out of it coming from that. So there's very likely going to be some additional discussion about that pretty quick here that might preempt having something coming to council before too long. Other than that, general discussion about the impacts of COVID have had on the business community and how they're coping and how things are, and a lot of concern, a lot of unsurety about what 2021 is going to bring. So hopefully everybody can keep a positive face and we can keep pushing forward. The business community can continue hanging on, and things turn around sooner than later. That's about all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Watt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Had my first RCMP meeting today, and happy to report that it sounds like crime is down primarily across the board, although there is an uptick in domestic situations. And one interesting tidbit from Fire Chief Martins was that dog bites are apparently on the rise over the last few weeks. So watch out, everyone. And I had a Community Futures West Yellowhead meeting last week, and the primary point of discussion was the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund that Community Futures is going to be managing on behalf of the federal government. These funds are going to be available to those small businesses that didn't qualify for the Canadian emergency business accounts. If there's anyone in town who wants to look into it, they can contact the Community Futures office in Hinton on Pembina Avenue. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I believe we have thank you, Councillor Watt. I think we might have a question from Councillor Ostashik.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a question, and it's about the dog bite thing, which is kind of weird, but I was just wondering if there was any reason for that given, or the dogs feeling stressed about the COVID situation too, or taking it out on people, or is it because there's people home who aren't normally, so the dogs don't like that? No, a little bit facetious there, but seriously though, was there anything given as an indication why that might be?
Mr. Martins, would you care to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to Councillor Stashik. No, actually, I think it's just because of the nice weather over the last month here. We've had a lot more people exercising outside, using our trails, just being active in general. And we've just seen a lot of dogs out recently, and passing on trails and that type of thing. So we're lucky that we've had only one repeat offender. Everybody has seemed to be new. So we've kind of just chalked this up to, people out being active due to the COVID stuff. So probably the dogs too, but you're right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You betcha. Thank you both, Chief Martins and Councillor Ostashik. Sorry, Councillor Waugh, I just wanted to confirm. I think you had said yes, you're good with that? Perfect. And then for myself, just so council knows, I've been having discussions with the mayor about committees. You should see something on my committees and recommendations in the new year. And then also just taking advantage of that lull in committees, but understanding the context of what we're dealing with right now. Two things. I did register for that, like I had said, that live town hall that was being hosted by the province, and in looking at the impact of COVID on especially the service industry. That did get postponed yesterday. I'm going to re-register for the postponement, which I believe is Thursday. So I'm looking forward to that Thursday evening to hear some of the concerns, especially in light of the fact that the province is making some announcements. And it's my understanding that some of the leaked announcements that came later this afternoon potentially heavily impact the service industry. So we'll see how that plays out by Thursday, Friday. And then, the other thing I'm going to continue to do is we're discussing most, and if it continues to move forward by will of council, look at funding that council's strategic emergency reserve. Try to find out really what the impacts have been more specifically to some of our service not-for-profits in the community. So that's some of my personal goals over the next little bit, because I think our community is ultimately under a great deal of stress from COVID and some of its impacts to both business and the services we offer. Thank you. And we will move on to our CAO with reporting and status report. Oh,
Mr. Chair, I think we missed a couple people.
You know what? I apologize. My screen shuffled around. And I realize now that the mayor is now in the lower left corner. Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I started from that position. So I'm going to go to the mayor and save the best for last, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had an Evergreens meeting, some of the focus on some of the outbreaks at some of the lodges, nothing in Hinton for Pine Valley. We hired out a third party to do a 360-degree performance review assessment of our CAO, sort of creating a platform for us to use. And obviously, as many elected officials sit on boards, some of them don't have that experience. So it was great information with that company to sort of help us out to really performance manage correctly, even though Kristen Chambers has done an amazing job for Evergreens and, juggling the Parkland project, Pine Valley, the Wildwood one coming, well in excess of $100 million worth of projects. So that's it on that. I did want to add a bit from Councillor Waugh. I was also in that PAC meeting for the RCMP and bylaw. Family violence, as he alluded to, is up, but it's up quite significantly, 34% compared to last year. And that's using the entire numbers of 2019 versus 2020. So that number might jump up in the 40% by the end of the year. So obviously a big concern. They're well aware, and they're trying to focus their resources on dealing with that and kind of building the connections with other not-for-profits and other resources that our community has, because sometimes it's not just the RCMP. You might have a domestic call, but it's really helping people get through that, right? Some you just can't help, and some it's about connecting them with resources that can help people deal through these difficult times. Dog attacks were mentioned. GPS, our Mr. Murphy acknowledged that the GPS system that we're going to be implementing here at the town of Hinton plays a huge part on theft. So we should see way less theft and things of that nature. He's seen huge successes in other municipalities, so that was great. And the only other thing, we were talking about ATE, and the high speeding on Highway 16 in the Thompson Lake area continues. And it really, it just begged the question, okay, what are we going to do permanently for that? At the end of the day, the majority, huge majority, near 90% of these violations are from people out of town, so they're not learning. So sure, they're getting tickets, but it doesn't solve the issue. So I believe we have to look at a permanent sign. So I said to the fire chief, a question I'll ask is the specifics on how much money we have in reserves allocated to safety. And I think as a council, we have to look at that area, because just handing out tickets to people who are new in the community does not make us safer. It just brings us more revenue, but we have to add something different than photo radar or even RCMP, catching people speeding. At the end of the day, we need a better solution. So that might be coming up in the new year also. And that wraps it up for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mayor, I do have Councillor Hawes with a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and I've actually, to follow up just a little bit, and I'm hearing a lot more too. I know that obviously the Highway 16 speed, but Mountain Street too. And I mentioned this the last when I talked about ATE and how there are certain zones that our contractor is not posting at. And I've heard a number of people talking about Mountain Street and the speed that people are, especially with these, with the weather it is right now, it just, and the icy potential patches and stuff, but is quite high too. So I did have though, to follow up on your question about the domestic, or the comments on domestic violence, and I think Ms. Hallworth is still on. I believe that that was one of the priorities in our dashboards of each community or each department, a kit to put together for domestic violence. And I'm just curious if she might be able to comment on when that might be available.
Administration?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm not sure if Laura is on the line or Ms. Howard is on the line. That is correct. That was included in the dashboard. I don't have an update on a timeline, but that's some information that I can provide to council and would likely be provided in a ComServe update before long. Ms. Howard is now here if she has anything to add.
Thank you.
I don't have anything to add. You captured it. Thanks.
Okay, you bet.
Well, and I just, if I could just highlight, it is something obviously on FCSS's radar as well. And I know some organizations in town that are also working on this, but I'm looking forward to, a proactive approach trying to provide a kit to those that are suffering from domestic violence in our community as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hawes, and ultimately, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And all kidding aside, my apologies for the shuffling around of people and losing your order. Just to make sure, did I capture council reporting because there was a shuffling? Anyone else missed? Okay. All right. So that being said, we will move on to CAO reporting and status report. Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as council and the public's aware, additional restrictions from the province are being rolled out as we're in this meeting. I apologize for looking at my phone so much, but I'm had Mr. Martins providing me some updates. As you also may be aware, some of this information was leaked earlier today, so we had a little bit of an idea of what we were going to be looking at. So just some assurance to council and to the community that communications from the town of Hinton will be supporting this and will be rolled out tomorrow. So we've got a lot of work to do to get ready for how these additional restrictions will impact the town of Hinton's operations, and as well are the folks that are working in our buildings. So lots of work to do there, but additional information will be shared with the public as we know what those impacts are. I really had very little to share tonight. Again, our EOCs are remaining at a level 1 activation. We're having our weekly meetings and roundtable. I will share any updated information with council during my reporting and status update each meeting as we work through the second wave of COVID. So please be assured that if there's anything additional that I see that I think council and the public could use as far as information on our municipal response, I will bring that forward. To date, the mask bylaw is being adhered to quite well. Our community is doing a great job. There's been no reason for tickets to be issued to anyone as of yet. We're looking at these additional restrictions as well through our bylaw and our CPOs. We've seen in the past when additional restrictions are put in place, we've received more calls just for clarification, really. Lots of folks in our community, they want to do the right thing, they want to follow the rules, but sometimes they need some support and understanding what they're obligated to do. So we're happy to support that, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, CAO. We will move on to legislative services update. Any updates from legislative services?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a lot to update, just working on completing the nomination packages, and we're hoping to have the packages available for potential candidates Monday, December 21st.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ms. Rendell. We will move on to executive assistant logistics information.
I have nothing.
Excellent. Then we are looking to move in camera. There is one item, personnel, a verbal update covered by section 24 of FOIP. Council, looking for a motion to move in camera, please. Councillor Nelson.
I'll move that we go in camera.
Very good. That is well put. Council, any discussion? Seeing none, then we will call that to question. All those in favor? And any opposed? Seeing none, that is carried unanimously. We will reconvene in camera at 5:15. That gives us a 7-minute break.